anything outside has to have a special license for it.
Well, or if it's outside and emanating to the outside, or it's inside and coming to the outside, they have to have a license for that, a permit for that too. And it's that permit that also triggers the decibel levels and disturbing the peace standard and such.
Correct.
So just want to make sure that that's being followed up on, because it's been a repeated problem with respect to the Main Street station. And the officers were on top of it, and
I'm sure he'll send it to Hector and it'll get taken care of.
I saw they were closed one night, a couple days ago, Monday, after they closed at a certain night down. It was Monday, I think.
no idea.
The station hardly opens, maybe on weekends and
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, just a quick question, because I always thought that a noise complaint was a disturbance of the peace, which was a police matter.
That's
Right.
exactly
Okay.
Well, it
When
can go-
does it become a code matter?
Any of the codes can be brought through us to the
Okay.
code board, or the police write a citation and take it to regular court.
Okay. I just wanted, because I've always pursued it through the police.
Well,
I just
and
wanted to,
I believe the ordinance allows it to also go through the code board.
which
and-
actually would be very effective in terms of, because actually one of the things, of course, also in the ordinance, if there is an actual code violation, if there's a found one, then they cannot operate for the next 3
Like-
years of
Special
events. But I was, when I'm outside the CRA area, I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, I still just dial the police, but, you know,
Well-
and that's great to get them both ways.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I think the code board will be more effective with respect to
Well, what they
curtailing
can
their
lose.
activity.
Yeah, with what they can lose.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Libby.
Reed, do we get a rolling list of the foreclosures that are in the Main Street redevelopment area? I ran into, somebody was circulating one at breakfast the other day, and I started counting the number of foreclosures in the Main Street area, and I had went through 3 pages and was like 35, and then had to go somewhere else and give back the list, because it bears directly on the maintenance issue of some of these properties. And the list also had the contact person on it and the phone number of the bank or the finance company who was in charge, but it certainly would help you, I would think, if you have access to.
Registration, you probably got it from us. The city has if any bank's filing foreclosure on any property, they have to then pay a registration fee and register it.
Okay,
And all that information goes on our website.
so you have that?
You all probably got it from
Okay,
us.
okay, thank you.
Is there a possibility we could get a copy of that as a member of the board?
Yeah, I can, I'll email the address, it's on the internet.
Yeah, and probably that would be easier, Virginia, because it changes daily.
Oh, I'm
It's
sure.
getting longer, it's
Yeah,
not
you can-
getting
you can find it
shorter.
Right on, it's on the internet, and
Okay.
it's, I'll have to think about it.
Give us, yeah, maybe.
If you could, just.
I can email it out.
I would appreciate it. 'Cause that would be interesting to see where our problems lie.
Any other questions for comments for Michael? Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Public comments, any public? John? John Q. Public?
You asked for it, Mr. Chairman.
You asked for it, it's there. Over a dozen of them.
I
There
think this
you
is lights that
go.
are out.
Yes, some for
Uh-huh.
as long as 11 months
Thank you.
in the park, your park, 11 months. John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue, 2 questions, well, one right off the bat. 2-minute rule?
3.
3-minute. City went to 2. So I don't know if all the boards went to 2.
We'll give you one, John.
Thank you, Pam. You and Pam Woods, I love you. One, fences, when you get to discuss it, does that include Ocean Avenue? The city owns a property. The fence has been popped out for a year and a half, something like that. We own the property. It was the old Sea Brazil. It's a white picket fence, and we could get that fixed too as well.
Got a
It's on the
screw gun,
ocean,
John?
Yeah.
you know, it's on Ocean Avenue.
Can we get your screw gun and,
No, if you got my screw gun, I'd pop all of them. Decorations on Main Street. There are basically 4 sections on Main Street. The area that's on east of A1A is not considered part of Main Street for some reason. They didn't put any decorations there. Oftentimes, they're separated. Years ago, when they did Main Street, they only went to Hollywood because it was a different zoning classification, so it stops there. And then the people on the other side of Halifax complain that when events happen, they're not included. You put the decorations, and I understand you're putting the flower pots in one of those 4 areas and not in the others. I think it's time that we unified Main Street and treated it as one entity. Having it in 4 different areas is just ridiculous. Secondly, the ice skating rink. I think you're only going to lose, what, $100,000, give or take? So you're not going to lose too much. And it will cost, apparently, about $2 million over the 5-year period. I don't know whether you all considered that as a large sum of money.
$2 million?
About $2 million. When you look at what we've committed to, if we do $166,000 every year and we give up the rental on the band shell every year for 5 years, do the math, it adds up, and then what the county puts in as well. It really adds up to quite a bit of money. So I thought it was something that's a lot of money to consider. And the other boards do things, and for some reason, it never gets back to you. There's a solicitation that went to the city, and it only pertains to Beach Street area because of their restaurants.
Right.
Our tourists get hit all the time, money, cigarettes, etc. We were not considered. It is of value to the beachside. I still think we have a tourism industry here. I know staff does not believe that, but we do. And there are many people that are in the area that rely on tourism. I would ask you to consider adding A1A from university to international as an area of concern for solicitation. Thank you.
The panhandling situation.
Yeah.
Tim?
Hold on, John. I don't know if you remember going back quite a few years now, but myself, Timmy, Paul Politis, and we tried real hard on that solicitation thing, and if you can help us anyway get some more headway on this, I'd be behind you. But we went months after months with the chamber, especially against the timeshare people and all that.
Remember the timeshare you won?
We compromised. Let's put it
Yeah.
there. We didn't win deals because they're out there full force now. But I agree with you, John. The solicitation on A1 from one end of Dayton to the other was getting up way out of hand. And if we care to bring that up down next year, Breed, I'd be more than glad to look at that next year.
Because I think our tourists are just as valid.
Oh, they
you know.
get trampled on every day.
Did the city pass the ordinance for the panhandling on Beach Street? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're going to. They
They're
did it
going-
once. It's coming back, I think,
It'll
next
pass.
meeting. It'll pass. You guys will just be excluded.
Was there any discussion with respect to doing it along A1A, or?
Apparently, they said that Maria thought it would be too much to consider any other areas. So,
Mr. Webster,
that's what.
when we looked at the case law for it, whenever they were challenged, the courts looked at, is this as small an area as possible, it has to be justified by public health, safety, and welfare. At this time, Marie was only comfortable with those, on the Beach Street where those sidewalk cafes are. And at the downtown meeting, they did mention, the E-zone and that by the downtown members. And she said when the E-zone comes forward, at that point, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
But at this point, she only felt comfortable with that certain geographic area that was put forth.
Is there fairly good consensus on this board that this should be strongly considered with respect to E-zone, A1A and such?
Well, I think it's a matter of timing because.
I realize, but I'm just asking.
Because Dave is correct, there was a full court press put on the commission to try and get an anti-solicitation ordinance on A1A, and I know, Dave, how hard fought that was and how
Unbelievable.
little traction was given. Now, I think the timing with the E-zone might be the bomb in Gilead. That might be the time, but I think our question is, is it needed? And I think it definitely is probably needed more now than it ever was. And so maybe, Carrie, maybe that's something you could discuss with Marie, because we certainly want timing in life is everything. And when we bring this forward to the commission, I think might be when some of the E-zone stuff comes along as well.
Because we'd actually have to wait for the actual rezoning for the E-zone, not
Right.
just, because all we've done so far are comp plan amendments to make
Right.
the E-zone possible, correct, Carrie?
That's
I
right.
mean, we don't have the
Like,
actual.
at this point, it's premature to do it in
That's
that
what
area.
okay, right, okay, I just wanted to be clear on
Because
that.
I believe Atlanta has 3 different areas that they've done it to, and it's withstood court challenge from what I've been told. So having a second one, I don't think would kill us, and I think it is extremely obvious that this is an area that it would fit. It doesn't do the whole city. It is just one street down A1A. There's almost no traffic on Main Street right now.
Well, I think we'd want to be looking at Main Street and A1A.
But I'll get anything right now compromised with that.
Don't forget to include it, Ocean Avenue.
I thought, my understanding was, is years ago when we did do that, there was an aggressive panhandling ordinance that was enacted.
There is a panhandling ordinance, and it
I mean,
It covers the whole city, and it's like from 8 a.m.
Right.
to 8 p.m. or something like that. This one that they're proposing is in this certain area, 24 hours a day.
Okay. So, but I mean, in the meantime, since we already have, I think it was titled aggressive panhandling or something like that.
Right, so maybe that needs more enforcement.
Maybe we need to, like, since we have that already on the books, that we can enforce that. Maybe that's when we should work on that. Because we already have that tool in the toolbox.
Gary?
The $2 million you quote is a shocking figure. I'm sure it didn't, I wasn't the only one that sat back in my chair. Reed, was there any reason why the whole ice skating on the beach program wasn't even presented to this board? I know it's 100% the province of the CRA, I understand that. But to have read about it in a newspaper and to have had a meeting when we could have been briefed on it, I mean, we're supposed to be an advisory board, and I'm hearing now from people like John and from other people and from Al himself that the anticipated deficit is going up. I think
Of course.
perhaps as an advisory board, we might have been able to bring some business acumen to the table here to cut the city's losses and have the event. Anyway, I'm just surprised at the selectivity, because I can remember sitting in the audience when the manager insisted that the Main Street Board give its opinion on a whole range of issues that were of much less significance and less dollar value than this, and I'm in support of it. It's not that I'm against it. It's just usually with me, it's not what happens, it's the way it happens that bothers me. Could you share with us why we weren't briefed on this ice skating on the beach and asked for our advice as an advisory board?
Well, going back and thinking about the timing, at least when we were involved, the ice rink itself, we got to separate the two, because the ice rink was not a CRA item, and that was entirely something that was happening with cultural services. And Mr. L. Smith, who he brought, I think back in, was it October, I think he made a presentation both to the county and to the city about this holidays at the beach. And there was just some coverage, I think, was in the newspaper about that, and it included some lighting as well. And as this progressed from an ice rink to, we were asked to look at lighting as a part of that.
Yeah.
So in November, we're working very quickly because they want to have this up by Thanksgiving. So I think at our November Main Street meeting, that's one I just missed when we were going through, you know how I have redevelopment projects listed at
Okay.
the end, and just skipped right over
Okay.
mentioning that, as far as my notes. But in October, just didn't have that information, or that we were going in that direction.
But philosophically, it would have been appropriate for you to brief us.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure, just to say, hey, by the way, if I know of something and it's happening Main Street, it's my intent to let you know what's just going on.
Well, I looked into the funding of this, and honest to God, there were a lot better ways to get this done at a lower cost to the trust fund and to the city. And that's what I thought, where I thought we could help in situations like this. That's why we've been appointed. We weren't appointed here just to sit here, but to bring our life experience and business knowledge and acumen to the table. And, again, I'm afraid while it'll be a success, a PR success, it'll be interpreted as having cost a lot too, because people will start dividing the number of people into the cost. And we don't need another cause celeb in the Main Street areas. We're trying to go to an E-zone. I mean, it can be interpreted as another colossal waste of money at a time when I know that's not our intention or our desire. So I'd appreciate it if at all possible we could be briefed and perhaps be involved like previous Main Street boards have been involved in very similar type programs and projects. I don't see this as that much different from the grants to businesses on Main Street or a whole series of other things. And we haven't heard the end of this. This has been a real topic of conversation on the radio talk shows, and I'd hate to see it picked up in television nationally as a silly thing to do and not a great thing to do to celebrate the season, which I think was the intention.
Could I ask?
Tracy?
Just a quick question. One thing you said, the ice rink, cultural services, was it not happening in the CRA?
Yeah.
You mean, is it not happening?
Is it not in the?
It is located in the CRA, absolutely.
Okay, and is it not something that is promoting the redevelopment area?
Absolutely.
Okay, so even in, I don't want to jump on you here, but even in October, the redevelopment plan, any promotions, this board is to advise the CRA, the community redevelopment. We're under the land development code. We advise them on policy. Part of what is called policy in the redevelopment plan is the promotional plan. This board in the past, the annual promotional plan that comes up, and believe me, I've sat on the commission board when there have been emergency and things go through. I'm not saying that this happens all the time, but to me, I don't care if cultural services is doing it or animal control. If it's in the CRA and it promotes the CRA, this is part of what it's doing. It's promoting Daytona Beach, but in our redevelopment area, it should always come to this board. And actually, if it doesn't, then I think there's a problem between the Community Redevelopment Agency, the commission, and this board in terms of what this board really does do for them. And so that's just, and I'd be happy to, and I'm sure I will speak, having read this as well and heard it on, I will be speaking to the CRA and the commission about that. So I do think that that's something that I don't care who's funding it, if it never has funding here, if it's something that is going to promote us, then to not, or promote the redevelopment area, to not have this board involved. It's like the beach palooza, or it's like that happened on the beach. There's a lot sitting here that could be very helpful.
There's a lot of events, and I can tell you, if you want me to take every one of those events that are, because there's a calendar and there's a lot of events that happen every, week, and so we're talking about a lot. I'm sorry, I do not even keep up with all of those applications that Cultural Services works in all of our CRAs, but there's a lot going on in these different districts in terms of.
But they get money from, if they get money from us, ever, It
Well,
should be before this board.
Well, they have gotten money.
That's what I'm talking about. If
Wait.
they get money from us,
Did Reed just say that we did, that?
You do
did
not-
use-
there was no
that
money used
166
for
didn't
prom-
come from you.
There was no
He said
money
that came from
for
the
any
culture.
promotion or anything else related to the ice rink.
the
only money that-
lights,
The lights, those are the lights
On A1A.
on A1A.
okay,
We're paying just under I think it's about 24,000 something per year.
okay,
And that's something that we're required at the last minute to go forward. Otherwise, it would not even come before the commission. It was intended to be.
because it was under the 25,000, right, for
But
the, okay.
because we couldn't change in the contract, a provision that was put in there by the vendor, that it had, we were kind of obligated to the 5-year for a purchase
Okay,
of this at the end, and he was going to repair it, et cetera.
okay, so none of this is coming out of the CRA trust fund?
The holiday lights are, so there's an obligation.
But they're under the 20,
Right.
but
Well-
what we're hearing, the 166 is not,
That's
okay.
totally separate.
Then, because
Okay.
that's where I'm coming from. If
It
it's a
was presented.
promotion and it happens, and it has to do with money coming out of the trust fund, it absolutely.
How
But
about fees?
But I don't wanna hear every kite
Personnel
festival.
fees. Personnel fees. I mean, there was a 15,000, then 20,000 pumped around.
That's out of the
That was the
166.
contract fee by the promoter.
Yeah, there's no CRA dollars going into the ice rink or any fees or anything else.
Okay.
That's totally, whatever is happening in terms of cost is happening over on the cultural services side. And I hope
And
everyone
that's funded through
understands
the general fund.
that is a part of that is that money, part of it's going to get paid back. We'll see how it ends up, but there are revenues coming back.
Yeah.
And if they meet the numbers we think they're going to meet, then this may work out very close to where the city's getting paid back.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I would have really felt better knowing this so that I could have picked up the phone and called in to the Bernier Show and several other shows and shared with them that it is not money coming out of the Main Street Redevelopment Trust Fund,
Yes, I
which
thought it
everybody is saying, and it's all over the city. So again, maybe Mrs. Sorbonne could do a news release promoting this, talking about how great it is, but also in a paragraph giving some of the facts of where the venture capital came from. Because believe me, nobody in the city other than you knows where the money came from.
I'll talk to her about it because
would be
we'll be doing some follow-up, in terms
Sure.
of how is it going, and
Sure.
as we get closer to the holidays, I'm sure that will be another promotion piece in our e-newsletter, however they get the word
See,
out.
I think if you had briefed us, there wouldn't have been this hubbub as the thing went up and the trucks came in and the electric extension cords went across the boardwalk and all of that stuff down there that people comment on because they're interested in it. We would have had a very positive way to answer any questions that were raised. I didn't know, so I didn't want to get into it, and nobody else tended to respond. It was actually in the paper, too. So that'd be very helpful, I think, in our efforts to promote the redevelopment area in the most positive way, especially as we move toward this E-zone concept. Everything has to be positive, I think.
Tim, you had a question or
No,
comment?
that's okay. The only thing is, I didn't know because, Al Smith came by my shop and told me what was going on. But as far as promoting it, like Peabody Auditorium, I'm on a list, and like now they're doing the Miracle on 34th Street. They came by, I've got a stack of flyers on my counter for it, I've got posters in the window. I know when the boardwalk does their stuff during the bike week and stuff, it would have been great as far as like if they would have came forward here, or at least we had some input, to have these flyers or have some posters in the store, because I've been telling customers that come in with small children and stuff inside the store, hey, you guys know this is going on? Nope, people don't know that they're here, because most of them aren't walking, or they don't read the paper when they're from out of town. That maybe, I don't know if there was something in the hotels or whatever that I don't know about, but just right in that area, it's just, if it's an easy way to promote things. I mean, obviously, they probably ran off more than 9 of these for the board, So, I mean, to have a few stacks of them around, or a poster or something to put in the businesses to promote these things. And
And
just, it's an easy way. That's a lot cheaper than airtime.
Just so you know that that promotional material, all of that all happened far beyond our November. You know, when we had that meeting, that was all getting pulled together right before Thanksgiving,
Right.
including that announcement we sent out on the email. So a lot of things that were happening
On the
very
fly.
quickly somewhere
Yeah.
in that
No, I-
2
and I-
weeks before.
I saw him carrying the brochures down to the ice skating rink at the ribbon cutting.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, once they're at the ice skating rink, they know the ice skating rink's there. When they're on A1A and you can't see the ice skating rink unless you walk, through the breezeway there, it kind of defeats. But I would tell people, I go, hey, I had people in the store and
But isn't that an
go
Al-
sit at Mai Tais, have a drink, and you can watch your kids.
isn't that really the Al Smith's responsibility to get that handled though, and such as the?
Well, you know what? If we had the opportunity to relay that, they do have, access to some of the businesses on A1A that would be willing to help promote these things that are the family type oriented things that we like in the area and that might add to the people's experience when they're here. I really don't mind. I don't put up posters for swap meets and stuff, but
if we had better intel on it, we could have helped with
Is it,
the whole-
just that line of communication.
Yeah.
By the
I
way,
think
and
that's
Al
what-
Smith came by my store too, and I'm also, I like it. I do think it's a positive thing. The only negative thing I saw when I walked there is if it's supposed to help the area businesses. They're selling hot dogs, sodas, funnel cakes. I mean, they had a tent with a bunch of, and I'm like going, if this is supposed to promote the area and.
Oh, did they end up with food and drink down there being sold? Oh,
Some
'cause-
days.
Under attack.
What's that?
Some days. I've seen it there twice.
It just so
Yeah,
happened
'cause
that
they
the
said
other
they
day
weren't
I
gonna
walked
have
in. I went there for the first time and I saw it and I was like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen, but I like the event. I don't want to come across negative, so I like it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one follow-up question quickly? If it's Recreation Department who's funding a majority of this, is their expectation 100% return of the venture capital? Because this is fee-based, it's not providing free access for residents, and I know there's a formula for recapturing dollars that Recreation operates under. Do you know how this factors into its charge? There's no distinction between residents and non-residents. They all pay the same fee. What is the recapture expectation? Do you know that? Is it the
Actually-
fraction or 100%?
Recreation and cultural are two different departments and operate two different ways.
Well, is this
This is
recreational?
Cultural
Oh, this is,
It's in
okay. then-
enterprise
Yeah.
fund.
Same with cultural services. There's no expectation of
Cultural
recapture?
services is an enterprise fund. It's a different operation.
Totally different. How they
There's
do
an
it.
understanding to recapture part of it, but in this first year, everyone
Okay.
understands there's a risk that.
So it's a fluid thing, okay.
It is, and we'll see how the
Okay,
first year
thank you.
goes, and, they'll decide whether or not they want to continue.
If Al Smith ends up in the E-zone, because there's rumor of it, would you talk to him that you want more information from him?
Yeah, we'll expect to see him here monthly then.
Okay, all right.
Virginia, you had.
Oh, and by the way, I think that was just a little bit over the 2-minute mark.
All right. We're going to move on then. Item 6, the appearance of vacant oceanfront lots. Reed, that's yours?
Yes, sir. What I want to do is cover an issue that came up before the city commission. And it was during the board comments, and there were some questions asked about the conditions of the fences, and it wasn't the first time. But staff was asked to start looking at what are some of the ways we might resolve the concern. The concerns were about 3 points. One was just the appearance, the look of what you see out there along A1A and towards the ocean. And the second point was that you do have the sand that blows over, and that can be an issue. And the third one was what's behind the fence. Are there people hiding behind the fence, sleeping behind the fence, whatever. Those were some of the concerns. Police have been back there. They've they've essentially determined at least that there's only one person that they've identified when they went up and down A1A, and we're talking about the city limits from one end to the other several miles. So that does not seem to be a significant issue, at least in their patrols that they've made up to this point. So they're getting up there, they're looking behind, they're not seeing that as the issue. Sand, as it's blowing off the ocean, off the beach or whatever, has a tendency to get airborne, and it's far above these fences in most cases, or wind has a tendency to blow it up and over, so you can catch some of it, but unless you have some kind of a special mesh or something, you don't get a whole lot of that sand out there. But that was one of the concerns and reasons that an ordinance was put in place to deal with this. But the one I think that is clearly a concern from my observation in driving up and down the street is the appearance. And when you look at the details of that ordinance, it looks like there's an enforcement issue potentially involved here about what Mike was just referring to earlier. People are walking through, knocking down the fences. You have owners who are not necessarily right here on site and not keeping after this. And I don't know if Mike wants to contribute any other insight into the problem, but I think it's a code enforcement nightmare that we're dealing with, number one.
Yeah, whenever the ownership changes, we have to start all over, because we've only cited the last owner, and these lots are being sold constantly. I mean, we see changing all the time. So let's say I get the first owner and I cite him, and then I take him to code board and tell him he's going to get a will fine if he doesn't fix it. And they start fixing it, and then they sell, and now I have to start all over again. And the owners also talk to us about, you know, they put up the no trespassing signs, and these same people just rip them down. And they're also putting up the cheapest wood and the cheapest fence they're shooting the nails into it instead of screwing it. But I screwed them with the screw gun with nails that were, you know, what is it, 3 or 4 inch screws, and they ripped those down. So I mean, a lot of places would just screen it with bushes in front of it, and that, you know, stops the tagging of it. And
well, you just take a look at a couple pictures I put up here, just to give you some idea of what we have a range of. We have some people are maintaining their fences. They've got the Baha'i grass out in front, and they've essentially followed the requirements. But
Bahia grass. The Baha'i are a world faith
thank you.
religion.
Yes. So that's a, you know, one question is, do we need more than that, or is that satisfactory in what we have? Do we really have to make any changes from what we see there? Another example, and then as you get to the ones that are a little rough and open, not painted, and this is the one that's in South Atlantic at the very south end at
Reed,
Silver.
I hate to interrupt, but stop, but don't change that picture.
Yeah.
Because wanted to make the suggestion. See how the fence has fallen down?
Yeah.
And behind there, the sea grapes and the sea oats and everything is taken over. Why can't, as part of the ordinance, being once that the lot to the east of the fence grows in just like that, the fence is taken down? Because to me,
That was going to be my suggestion.
to me, that
Much better.
without the fence is a heck of a lot more
Yes.
appealing than even a white vinyl fence.
Yes.
Because that's what you want to see when you drive down A1A is the natural dune.
Right.
And if you were to take that fence down, that lot would look a heck of a lot. But like, if I'm not mistaken, there's an approach right to the north side of this lot right here, I think.
That's correct, Silver Street.
That's where you're going to have the sand blowing up from the beaches up through the approach, and you may need to keep a fence on the north side of that of this lot right here. But going along A1, take the fence down once it grows in like that, and that'll hold your sand back.
That's a very good point.
Because I was going to say, you know, I drive up and down A1A,
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Reed, but
No,
no,
but
that's the picture I needed.
and I've been looking at these, and I've long thought, you know, it's all grown in, and especially when I'm going down in the morning, I would love to see the sunrise, but it's like right where the darn fence is, and since it's, like, get rid of the fences, because they are, most of them are cheap, you know, it's, even if someone's not pulling them down, they are so far beyond weather beaten as to be not Cape Cod looking. I mean, they're just terrible. And yeah, I would say once it's established, to take it down, it will look much better. It gives that natural open look. It gives the beach look. But the other thing, I would say while we're looking at this, I think we need to deal with the west side of A1A as well in this, because, and I mean, I know that where there is a fence, that you at least note it, that there's a problem. But I think if I'm a tourist and I'm driving this way, I'm going to see both sides of the road. And both sides of the road where they do elect to put up these fences, because they have that election on the west side of A1A. They can either decide to do it or not to do it. And where they do it, I actually think we should be dealing with the same thing. If it's an established, if there's a natural looking ground cover like this and it's just not big up, I think those things should come down instead of having to be repaired. Because the other thing that happens when they're repaired, you have all this awful area, and then you have one new board here and one new board there, and then you have another few here, and that looks even, I mean, it's like awful. So I would agree with Dave. I would like to see these taken down as fast as possible.
And you've got access issues, terrible, and insurance issues. With the fence down, what's to keep people from driving over the curb and driving their car right up onto, which they will do?
Well, they drive their car up with the fence there.
Yeah, but less of them, fewer of them can. I'm just sharing with you from the property owner's perspective why a crummy fence is better than no fence at all, because there are legal issues.
Well,
not what's it called, an attractive nuisance, where it appears that you have not secured the property adequately. Somebody drives a car and goes off the seawall. There are all kinds of legal issues too, I think the city discussed.
Usually those are,
no.
Drive a car from A1A to the beach through that lot.
Through that.
They're gonna get stuck before they get much past that
Well, but
fence.
that is the question. The question is, this is private property.
But every kid here grew up playing baseball on private property, vacant lots. And
But what every kid did then isn't the issue today.
but I don't think there's a legal issue for a vacant lot, whether someone drives on it or not.
Just a second.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Didn't these fences go up because post-hurricane, we had all the damage, we had sand blowing up?
Sand.
It was kind of an emergency measure to
Right.
keep the sand from blowing up all over the place. Well, now it's growing back, and I really think they should look at requiring them to revegetate the area. And once it's vegetated, then take down the mandatory fence requirement, so we can actually see the beach.
Yeah.
If it's open there.
Until it's all
and if-
bulldozed
but
and
if
the
they,
building is built.
that's
But then
fine.
they have a construction fence. that
Could
they
it be
have to-
because there's a lot of subjectivity in this. I mean, while that has plenty of vegetation and it would look nice to remove the fence, there's going to be a lot of areas that I'd rather have a white picket fence, you know?
And there's standards for that, and they can adopt and through
That's what we're saying.
landscaping,
Yeah.
And they can have an inspection say,
Yeah,
are
but
you
how
no
do
longer
we put
required
it
to
in
have
an
the fence?
ordinance?
What's that?
How do we standardize it? I mean,
It's hard to.
it's going to be difficult.
Oh,
We leave that up to the attorneys.
it can be done better
Yeah.
than it's being done. Right
It's
now,
all-
if we have a required fence situation where it's ugly, it's deteriorated, we don't think it's necessary, then let's pass on that.
And we
How
have
about we do
landscape, we
this?
have
Wait,
landscape
how about-
requirements all the
It's all-
time.
yeah.
He deals with landscape requirements where it's fully sand, where there's no ground cover. That's not, and actually, every code officer, we have that already to deal with.
Well,
So,
how about we have a standard that requires white picket fences, but if somebody, a property owner, wants to make an application to grow vegetation, he brings a plan before staff and has it approved, so that way we have
Well,
something,
that's what we're
you know, like,
talking about.
we have a standard.
that's what we're talking about, and get it, once it's
Well, I'm trying to
there.
think of the ordinance, you
Oh,
know, you know,
okay.
how it's gonna happen, and that I
Just
could
jump.
accept, you know, because
Okay.
then
It's
you
a
have a
discussion.
standard.
Dino,
The
I think-
exception to the standard, they have to make an application for.
Something along those lines, that just right, let's deal with the concept of, hey, fence isn't mandatory. Tim?
the ordinance we have already states that it needs to be seeded, sodded.
Right.
Yeah.
It already states that it has to be a vinyl white fence, or it has to be a wood fence.
Oh, yeah, just.
Yeah, it has to be a fence, either vinyl or wood. The wood has to be, supposed to be painted.
Painted, yeah, that's
Isn't
in
that
violation.
how it is? Isn't that in here already? That's the, okay, maybe that's the only thing lacking. It can't be chain link. Most of these lots have been demolished, and the natural vegetation's already pretty much taken over all of them.
I
But,
think the first so many feet has to be,
yeah, the first, in front of,
seeded.
west
for
of,
the first 3 months, they have to wet it. They have
right,
to keep it
but
moist.
behind that, hurricanes were in '04. Natural vegetation's almost, pretty much taken over all these already. But I mean, we basically have the tools right here, already. I don't think we have to come, we just have to figure out what to do with these stupid fences. Now, once we pull the fences down, we can leave the posts up there, and it can be posted, no trespassing or whatever, and put on the list for the police department, so they have the right to go inside there and arrest anybody that's in there already, right?
The police department have to have a form signed?
Yeah, we do. I have that on all our
What are you
properties.
gonna do with these people that live out of state?
You call them up and ask them, say, can we post a sign, because they have, the city, I know they did that on some property, the property that became the park south of Main Street. So we already have we've already got it right here, as far as these, they're supposed to be seeded. I read that in here,
Yeah,
right?
first 30 feet.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
30
We're
feet.
talking the rest of it, though.
But the rest of it
Takes over.
so then we just say, they gotta seed the whole thing. That's maybe, we'll say, as far
Well,
as seeding it.
I wouldn't say seed, because you don't have St. Augustine or Bahia grass all the way,
Right,
what is taken over is the more natural vegetation, the dune daisy, the
Dune-
stuff that's,
But you can also, Bermuda grass grows very well in that area too.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask the staff to look into what the process would be to recommend a change in the fence ordinance that would allow for natural landscape in lieu of the fence, as long as it was posted and we satisfied, either the owner's requirements.
could I interrupt a minute before we do that? Since this is on the planning board's agenda tomorrow night, it would be actually very helpful, rather than us asking staff and waiting to get back, because I will be taking this to hear as much as possible from
Yeah, okay.
the board.
All right, well,
'Cause we'll have
rather
this
than the
discussion.
staff, the planning board, it really,
Yeah.
what I think you're asking is what we think, what is our advice about a natural dunescape rather than the fences. I would definitely support that, as long as, as we take the necessary precautions to protect both the city and the property owner, whatever that level is, and maybe we could talk about that, and if we're all in agreement, Tracy, you could pass this
Well, I've been
on,
making
huh?
notes as we've been doing
Now,
it.
this is
so-
a discussion item here during on the planning board's agenda for tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
Is it
night.
an action item?
No, it's a discussion item as well, but that's why I'm saying, instead of waiting a month for staff to get back here,
You could
to have
express
this
to
be
them.
part of the discussion
Well, they're gonna
tomorrow
have to
night.
ask a lawyer too. They can't, cover all.
That's why they put it on as a discussion item, to
Right.
generate the ideas, and then we can take the ideas
Right.
and see
Okay.
what
And
we
that's
can
what I'm
come up
saying, the
with.
idea-
Well,
Ideas
that'll
here
be a
would be-
month anyway.
My
Right.
feelings is, what you propose, as long as you add in a section that will allow property owner to remove the fencing, as long as there was proper vegetation, and how you're gonna put that in.
Well, that's also a distinct idea from what they're saying, is you're saying have it as an option, and you're saying make it come down
No.
once the natural.
No,
make it optional?
Here's
Yeah,
a- here's a
We're
suggestion.
consistent in this.
Why don't we make a suggestion that the city, somebody in the city, is the code guys or the landscape guys, whoever, but go to one of these lots and say, here's a lot that's totally grown in. And at that point, so the city goes down from lot to lot to lot, and the fences are already up. When that particular lot gets to the point where it's the same look as this lot that the city has agreed on, this will be the example for all the rest of the lots, then go to the owner of that lot and say, your property now is at the point where you don't need the fence, you have the option of taking it down. But if it's in disrepair, you need to have this thing repaired in X amount of days and get it done. I can guarantee you, they're gonna say,
To take it
the
down
damn
rather
thing
than
down.
repair
Or
it.
leave it up to the
Yeah.
city to come up with an example lot, and that's the example they use up and down. As Timmy said, most of these lots are already grown in.
Once the soil, the sand, the dune, whatever you wanna call it, stabilized, it's there. And that stuff,
But I-
it-
But I'm sorry.
I think we're all kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah. But I'd rather have the standard to have, or to require a white picket fence and make this like they have to abide by these
No, I don't want that
conditions.
as the standard. See?
Well, it is. It is.
It is.
It'd be a standard up to the point where the city determines that lot is grown in enough.
Exactly,
Okay, all right,
exactly.
And then they have the
Yeah.
option of
And then it's an
removing or
option.
maintaining their fence
Right,
properly.
right.
All right.
And I would just say, maybe we want to even encourage, we have a landscape grant along the major commercial corridor, so we could look at that with the natural landscape, look for dune plants, the flowers,
Yeah,
and get a
get the
little,
super-
maybe a little more. We don't want them to put anything up that's going to block.
No,
No, no, you want,
Ground
no.
cover.
Right,
Ground cover,
exactly,
period.
ground cover.
Like,
But you're gonna have a licensed architect draw that up, or a licensed landscape.
No.
no, 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 no,
No,
no, no, no, no, no.
It's not a landscape plan. It's
Right. It's a
ground
natural
cover.
dunescape.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
ground
we
cover.
we
It's
just would
reclaimed
have to
natural
figure out
resources.
objective criteria rather than just using a picture. We have to figure out how to put it in words.
80%
You know,
of
whether
the lot
Right.
it's,
has to be, you know.
Let me summarize as
Actually-
I think I understand it.
Okay, but wait, to help the one thing.
Okay.
Actually, pretty much like what Stan Mancusos did in terms of for objective, if you look at what he did when he put in the rides, and this board went through, this is the more natural look, and there was actually a list of those things. If they were just supplied a list of, this is what is natural for the dunes, look, Helen Humphreys was great on that, actually. And that became your objectivity. It comes off here to get the natural landscape. And it doesn't have to be an architect that's saying there's an irrigation
No, no,
system,
no,
or
no, no.
these 3 palms are gonna go here and these 6 dune daisies. It's just to get that natural look,
Natural.
and you get,
If they put sand spurs in there, I can guarantee nobody's gonna trespass.
right, that's true. No,
I think the
The natural
consensus
Yeah.
is that if the property owner has the dune area and the sand all revegetated with natural vegetation, that it would not be necessary that they keep up the fences and the
Maintain.
fences can come down.
Yeah, maintain the fence.
Because we believe that the natural vegetation is more attractive and more conducive to tourism than is some ugly vinyl or wood fences. Do we have unanimous consent on that? I think we do.
If I can just, back to that fence on the west side that you're talking about.
Yeah,
That fence was put up because when he didn't have a fence, he started having people sleeping in the bushes in the back area. At that point, we cited him. And then other times we'll come by and see a car parked there, and so we write him up for that. And so we actually forced, that was part of the issue, was to have a fence put up so that you couldn't get people walking into his property, and he had to, so it was more to keep away people from sleeping there, parking there. Yeah, and even with this, you know, and he had to put it up with the police department. So the fence the issue was a lot more for.
but the west side, they already have the choice. They can do a fence
Well, yeah,
or
that
not
one.
do a
That one
fence.
you're talking about?
Well, there's one, I know, but that's why I think we need to look at the west side.
And, yeah, we
the same.
actually cited a lot of people and had them put fences up, because during bike week, people were
They
just
park
walking
all-
into their lot and charging money, and we would take them to court, and they got fined, and they said the only way to stop it is to put a fence up so no cars can park in there. So we've been doing that.
Yeah, because I'd like to get, actually, because I'd like to get rid of they get a choice.
Right, but what
On
I'm
the-
saying is, they're out of town, and they don't have the fence, and someone
Uh-huh.
parks on the property, they get an automatic fine of up to $1,000.
Okay, all right,
So it
good.
was
Okay,
their
then that's
choice.
good. Okay,
But if they, if the car drives over the fence, then
Okay.
there's, we
All
won't
right.
do that.
that helps,
Well,
thanks then.
What about the concept of putting some standards into these fences? If we're having problems with
Like
the
you said, leave
fences,
the posts, something like that.
well, but I mean, if we're having problems with them building with the cheapest possible stuff and it's deteriorating and they're using nails that are gonna rust, I think
That's a good point,
we need to
too.
look at some standards that require certain size
Yeah, the
timbers,
size of the timbers.
certain size fasteners, certain construction
Yeah,
specs with respect
minimum
to it.
standards.
Yeah, with stainless steel fasteners and things like this, so that at least if it goes up, it's got a chance of staying up.
Wind load criteria.
Yeah, like others have to do.
Okay.
So we're not gonna have something that's gonna fall down. And if somebody's having just simply people getting vehicles on their property, that can be dealt with other barricades without fences, with
Yeah,
posts
yeah.
and things like
People
that.
going in the back, sleeping in those bushes. And,
Yeah, well, whatever,
Yeah.
but I think some standards relative to the
That's why I
fences
just
we'd be
wanted, there was
supportive
some
of
other
also.
background to those fences.
Mr. Chairman,
Or Gary, I'm sorry.
Copy of material.
the issue very soon is going to be raised about additional parking on the ocean in the redevelopment area.
I think that's
And,
next.
yeah, I know. Please, Tracy.
Okay.
Sit back, relax, take a deep breath.
Okay.
Everything will be fine. When the county started building oceanfront lots, there was a big push and effort to make them natural, to make the landscaping a natural dunescape. And instead, the county went to St. Augustine grass and non-native shrubs in the 2 large oceanfront parks that were built by the county through the ECHO program. I'm just wondering if we have an opportunity early enough into this to make our oceanfront parks, which will be parking as well as parks, and they're coming, natural dunescapes. And I think it's a concept, if you support that, so that in our redevelopment area, if you're parking on the ocean, what's next to you is natural. It's not a petasporum and St. Augustine grass with fertilizer and weed control and all of the nightmare stuff that they have at the 2 big oceanfront parks, the one in the North Peninsula and the one in the shores. And this might work right, this might sort of be a corollary to this concept of these privately owned lots as well, that we're interested in a natural look in the parks, the parking areas, the new parks. We missed it with Sunsplash, or not Sunsplash, but Breakers. It was a concept that was discussed, but it didn't get very far because it was so close to the boardwalk, and there was a desire to have everything clipped real close and neat and shiny and all that. I'm just raising this as a possibility because there's $20 million of county money that was carved rather inelegantly out of the ECHO program to buy beachfront property, and I know the city is very involved in lobbying for those dollars, and I'm just wondering if we're interested in this natural look and whether or not this comports with the consultant for the ocean front of the E-zone, and this might be the time for us to share with planning board and with other colleagues our advice on the look.
I certainly like the idea of having as much natural vegetation that's non-maintenance.
Yeah.
We don't have to
No
go
water.
replacing the sod every year or so because the salt kills it and such. And I think it's
And xeriscape as much as possible.
much less expensive in the long run, so, I mean,
What do you think about, is that are we gonna run into problems with the city on that concept in the redevelopment area, especially on the ocean?
Well, I'm not sure about running into problems. I think the E-zone clearly spells out a list of plant materials and follows the idea of a dune and xeriscape in what we call the Beach Town Square,
Okay, well, then we're
which
fine.
is in that park. So I think that's the intent. We'll see how the execution of that all happens. But
Okay,
that's the
thank you.
intent.
Thank
Yes, sir.
where we at, Reed?
Well, I think you've sent a clear message, and we'll pass on, and Tracy will, I'm sure, pass along tomorrow night.
Stop there, okay.
Okay, I can move on. The next item, and you're welcome to stay.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Appreciate it. This one might be a little more complicated of an issue, but it's one that's been around for a while now. It's serious, and that is that in the RDB5 area, particularly in that zoning district, and from ISB over to Main Street, why do we have the vacant stores? Why is nothing really happening that to change for the better what we have? And over and over and over again, what we keep running into primarily is this issue of it requires for an occupancy permit to get X amount of parking. And if you look at all these lots and the depth of the lots that are there and what's around, you can't get there. Now, you can use remote parking provision that says you can go out and lease, but you got to get a 10-year lease, and you got to be within, what is it, 400 feet, and so you're not going to find anything. First of all, it's very expensive for anyone who's coming in and trying to figure out how to make sense of both the rent and the parking and everything else that goes with it. So it's been a quandary, so that when people have come in, and they are, it's not like people say, I don't want to rent that space. And I know that I have Mr. Mayera that's here tonight, and this is one of his concerns, is he's got some of that property that we're talking about. And it's not like we haven't heard this before. At least most of you will recall we had one of the properties that had that issue. Now, we were presented with the alcohol part, which created a more intensified number of parking spaces required by a conditional use in that case. But it goes back to whether it's any of those uses, and I think I provided you all the table on what's allowed in RDB 5. Yeah. It's that quandary that, unlike Main Street, where we provided the legislation and the change there down Main Street was you didn't have to provide the parking. I mean, that was not something you had to do. That parking was going to be somewhere nearby. There was an expectation that the city, the public, would be providing some of that parking there. And so that even though we had a lot of things going on along Main Street that need the parking, it's still working, and it's not working the way the E-zone calls for. And the E-zone, obviously, one of the biggest issues we had to deal with is try to figure out all the parking and how that's going to be solved as we try to move that plan to reality. What we are looking at, though, in RDB 5 is that we need to have some other ideas out here. And so far, I think you've got some good ideas put out there on the fence. I hope maybe and I'm looking for some thoughts other than what I think is the most direct and the simple one, the easy one, is if we could change, at least in the RDB 5, this provision about having to have a parking space for 10 years rather than deal with the reality of trying to, if something changes, because a lot of things are going to redevelop, to be able to move that parking around, so have a shorter term. And the other thing is to perhaps go out and look at about 1,000 feet, which a lot of people that are looking at where you can park and where that space is, depending on the use, will be able to provide that. So that's just one way maybe we can solve some of the short term. The longer term solution, I think, is probably going to end up being this Main Street type of solution where we're providing the public parking that we want anyway for the beach access, more people having the ability to move to the stores and to the beach.
You no longer provide parking for Main Street. You used to have a lot of lots.
In a reality sense, there's a discussion there, but again, the E-zone is intended to hopefully solve that. But this area does not have an E-zone solution right now. So the question is, what should we be doing here to try to maybe solve these problems instead of letting the status quo rule the day?
Reed, I see there's three problems. The one problem is you have the depth of these lots, there's so many small lots, things like that, and the restrictions there. The second problem that I see is all these lots that we were just talking about with all the fences, those used to be hotels. Those used to be rooms where people were staying, and that was people in the area. So we're talking about two different groups of customers. People that are heads in beds that are here, park their car, walk around, and you'd see a lot of foot traffic on A1A that you don't see now because as Mr. Mayor will tell you how many rooms he's lost on Ocean Avenue after the hurricanes. What's left? What's it called? There's basically 1-2 hotels there. All the other ones are gone. The third problem is during the special events, from Seabreeze to ISB, the majority of the parking lots get filled up either with TPAs or vendors. So we invite 500,000 people to come to Daytona, and then they come here and we tell them they can't park anywhere. So those are the three issues. So yeah, we have to figure out something, give people a little bit more flexibility as far as, yeah, maybe we should expand from 450 feet or whatever the criteria is to 1,000, get some off-street parking that's a little bit further away. I think we need to ease up some of the parking restrictions as far as the on-street parking for the residents in that area. I think there's so many spaces versus how many actual single-family homes are there which have been cut up illegally into multifamily housing. So you've got these houses that were cut up, and now you've got 4 or 5 people living in different places. So instead of a house that would have 2 cars maybe, there's 5, 6 cars there because you got 4 apartments, you got 3, 4 people living in each apartment, so you got stuff all over the place. But I think the 3 things are, yeah, which we're not gonna solve the hotel room problem. I mean, that's the economic thing. We can take care of the distance and getting people, but I think the 2 things we can work on is the residential parking, because you can't really park anywhere. You get off the street, you go around the block, there's a red thing, and we know how ticket happy the parking guys are. So, but those 2 issues we could probably address, but we've lost, what, 40% or more of the hotel rooms since '04 in this town, from end to end, so, like I said, all these things that we're looking to reseat and put up fences, those were hotel rooms that we had customers in. So,
That had parking lots.
Yeah, yeah.
If memory serves me correctly, actually the lots, the residential permit parking and not having public parking on the street, that's part of our agreement with the county to support the county parking garage, is it not? I don't think we can ease up on those. I thought the city had to make a commitment that would force people into the parking garage and not have on-street parking. So I believe that's not something that can easily be changed.
I don't know if it's easy, but I think we need to look at all of these pieces, because when I go down Grandview...
I'm not saying don't look at
Right.
it, I'm just saying that's not quite as easy as...
Well, if the county's serious about something like that, then you know what they should do is maybe meter their parking lots, like their lots that are, their
Right.
lots are all unmetered, meanwhile, all the city lots are metered.
Right.
So they have, so they want to help their parking garage. Well, you know what? Meter your lots and push people into the other things too. So they want, we meter our lots and streets we've got residents, we've got all this space is taken up up and down every street, so people can't park there. But then the county puts up Sunsplash Park, and they have how many hundreds of parking spaces there that could generate some income, and that's just free for all parking there. So that's why if you look, Sunsplash Park's packed all the time because nobody wants to go feed a meter.
They're walking to the north.
And nobody wants to pay $5 to pull down onto the beach for the day or whatever when you can go park at Sunsplash Park for free. So, but.
I agree with Timmy's comments, but I also want to add, years ago, Jerry Lanston looked at the possibility of, one is expanding it, allowing up to 1,000 feet, making deals, shorter term, that's fine. But Jerry Lanston had looked into the possibility of people paying into a fund which would help build a parking garage for the area based on how many parking spaces that business should have, do you remember that, Tracy?
Sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened with that, but it was actually a very good idea, because I don't see why a business would not want to encourage, having parking, public parking garage right across from them,
And I think that's what we're talking about too, is to apply, the E-zone is talking about a similar way of doing it. It's a question of whether it's voluntary, mandatory, and how that is, the mechanics of that work. But the idea is that if you need the parking, you can pay into the fund as opposed to provide it through some other way.
Which I'm totally in favor of that as another option. So, and you could give the property owner both options, A or B, and you'll be in compliant.
Has there been any discussion on the Jerry Nolan property that's directly behind the stream line that large piece of property. There was some resistance in the neighborhood about it being converted into pure parking.
Right.
But times have changed, and the definition of the E-zone has changed, and things have changed. And that's still sitting there. That's a big piece
You
of
tried to sell that
property.
to the city at one time, right?
Yeah, and that's a huge piece of property. And with 1,000 feet, you would be on the east side of A1A from that property. Is there any interest at all on the city's part? And
I think there is interest. I don't think we've seen any, and the city hasn't offered anything back. The price hasn't changed since that day, back when there were good prices. But for whatever reason, I can tell you this: it is in a good location for that purpose. We had to focus on the E-zone and some of the
Right.
things we want to do then.
Right.
But you're right, times have changed. I'd love to hear from the members of the board here, if there's an interest that we go back and look at that, I will convey
you all know what
that.
I'm talking about? There's a huge piece of property that's just a piece of property. How big is it? It's probably could park 150 cars, I would think.
I think
More.
so. This is probably not the best map to look at, but it's right just to the west of the Streamline
Yeah,
Hotel.
behind that row of houses that abut the streamline,
Right.
all the way up to, what is it, Wild Olive?
Rosselli's is?
Pardon?
Rosselli's, the Italian restaurant?
Behind
It's all
it.
behind. It's
Yeah,
behind
behind
that
it and
whole
to the
block.
south.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a whole block.
Right. So it could do some good in the future. I think it's a little longer term, but if we want to start looking at it, it's not a permitted by right use, but you saw that we can use the public use permit process to
right.
establish.
I think, down the road as this E-zone gets going, as we saw with Joe's Crab Shack, that, the county came up with parking for the employees and all that. Looking at this lot, not only this lot, but other lots, is going to be imperative on the cities to find centralized parking. Because I agree with what you said, having Joe Bear and his buildings to these standards that are impossible to adhere to if you're going to operate a business, unless you can buy property around there like some businesses did and can't do. So it's going to be up to the city to look at these and say, yeah, let's go after Jerry Nolan's property, or let's go after this piece or that piece.
Even a
Down the
lease,
road,
lease
we're going
purchase.
to need centralized parking, not just for the county, but for just the normal people walking around. Safe.
And don't
centralized
forget,
parking.
closer to the Main Street area, you also have that deal with Hilton, where their surface lot could become a high-rise parking garage and you don't even have to purchase the lot. You just build a parking garage and guarantee the Hilton so many spaces.
Just build it?
Yeah, just build it. Well, and
Just spend a
actually,
few $1 million. I mean, that's,
and I do think that's what's important. I do think that's what's important in all of this, is setting up a funding mechanism for this, because it can't just be taxpayer money doing this. It has to be, this would be something that would very much be a public-private kind of partnership. And, we did talk about that. It never really went anywhere. But it does help a business owner get into compliance to be part of that, if you have that fund set up. And it has to be a fund that can't be touched, can't be loaned from, can't be anything. It is earmarked for this. No one can take from it. It's this. It can't be borrowed and repaid at some later date, and then we need it before that later date it's repaid. I mean, it really has to be dedicated when it's done. I do think that going further than 400 feet, 1,000, quite frankly, even 1,500 feet. I'm never one when I hear people go, well, someone's not going to walk that far. Well, we all travel. We walk that far. You want to go that far, you're going to walk that far. You know where you, you park in one place in St. Augustine and you walk all over the whole city.
Right.
So that, I don't think is a consideration, this closeness. And I would be interested in most businesses, if they're going to, the 3-year mark is the failure Mark. They're either going to make it to 3 years or fail in less. If they're going to make it to 3 years, they're going to be interested in renewing their lease. I think a 3-year lease is plenty rather than a 10-year lease. That way, if the business doesn't make it, they're not tied up any longer. If they are, they're going to want to see something happen, and I think that they will take care of their own parking. So I think a 3-year lease, and I would go 1,500 feet.
I agree with that. And I don't agree with what you said, Tracy, was some type of a public-private. Take the word public out of there, because now you are using taxpayer dollars.
Well, it's
But make it-
CRA. I think you can use some of the
I think it
trust
should be
fund.
more of a private business owner fund.
Mm-hmm.
The businesses that want to be in those areas
Right.
are the ones that contribute to this fund, whether it's the Hilton or whoever it may be, Joe's Crab Shack or whatever. Everybody that participates in the E-zone area as a business partakes of this fund. This way you take it out of the public to where the taxpayer that does not own a business, that is the old retired person or young retired person that doesn't go to the E-zone or whatever all the time, is not paying for something that they're never going to use.
But
See, it's just when you say public, private, when you use the word public still means people that are never going to use that may own property are going to get stuck paying for it.
yeah, but I also have the idea that I believe, I'd rather, I don't look at it as a piece of a pie, and if I don't eat that part of the pie, I'm not responsible for it. I rather would say a rising tide floats all boats. And
I agree.
I'm part
If
of the-
economic times were to where people could afford to do that, but right now a lot of people can't afford to pay for anything else out of their property taxes. Is what I'm getting at. People that are living on fixed incomes, and that's who is also
No,
going to
I'm
be
talking in the
contributing.
CRA area, and that would be a decision down the road. I'm not saying you set it up that way, but that would be a decision down the road if in the CRA they wanted to dedicate some funding to it. I'm not saying set it up as a I'm
Okay.
sorry, but you also can't keep the
If it comes straight out of the CRA, then I don't have a problem. with
Yeah,
that.
that's where I'm
Okay.
talking about. I'm not talking a general fund,
A gen-
public.
coming out of
No,
people's
no, no,
pocket.
no,
Okay.
no, no. No, I'm talking, because we're in a
Then I don't know
CRA.
about
I'm in a
that.
CRA board meeting, or a pre-development board. That's all I'm talking about. Okay.
And
We're
I think
clear.
what you're saying is have the public be the facilitator, but have the participants participate in the beneficiaries help fund it.
Right, like,
Right.
like
Exactly.
like when you go to do a construction job or something, and you decide say they want you to plant 20 trees, and you say, you know what, I know in South Daytona you can pay them to the tree fund and not plant a tree. So instead you pay them to the parking lot fund. You don't put a park. You need 20 parking spaces. You only got room for 10. Make $2,000 a parking space, or whatever the number is.
And I don't
And
know
then
of
your
a
fund builds
single
up.
redevelopment area around this country that I've seen where you don't have some form of public-private bulk parking
Right.
in the background. You don't put it on the ocean,
No.
okay?
No.
You don't put it even on necessarily, hopefully, the west side, because that's your corridor. You
Right.
put it on the
Behind,
block behind.
behind.
And it's the block behind, or it's in the cities,
Exactly.
it's the block below,
Exactly.
and such.
Mr.
Gary-
Chairman, very quickly, we had a private property owner on Main Street who was very interested in buying the lot behind the barber shop to put in a group parking facility. He would buy it, and then businesses who needed parking would participate in it. And he went to the city to see if he would be required, there'd be any deal on the taxes, and if he'd be required to follow all the setbacks. And it's explained to me that it would be tough for this private person to put in this shared parking lot, that the city had certain standards that it wasn't going to move off of. And I'm wondering if, as time goes on, if we can look at those standards, because I'm glad that Joe's Crab Shack has got it, and I'm glad that it satisfies part of our contract with them for employee parking. But that concept of somebody buying the property, tearing the building down, putting in a parking lot, just like in New York City, I mean, in all cities. And if you're a business there and you want to have secured parking, either for you, your employees, or your patrons, you pay for it. And is it as hard as it was explained to me to do that?
Well,
Or
it was not
was it
permitted
an
for...
emotional
No, No, and we were in the process of buying the property. We're talking about 14 South Grandview. And that one, clearly, there was no way someone could go in without rezoning or doing something, like that to come in there and take all those steps.
But isn't that what we're after, though?
Yes,
This
yes.
is exactly what we're talking about.
And I think the E-zone concept and the zoning overlays and things will help facilitate the ability to do that kind of thing.
That's the intent.
So, Joe, did you want to say
Yeah,
something?
I just want to add one thing, sorry. Mayara, 43 South Atlantic. Mr. Libby, it's 177 spot in Jerry Nolan's in the back. The idea,
close.
I just want, I was going to suggest something. All my tenants, I can add a $50, $75 or $50 a month for parking to add to this fund, and they will not say a word about it.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is, the idea is good, the idea is there, as long as we make it easier. They don't mind paying more money for the rent, as long as we make it easier for them, and I'll tell you what, I went from Speedway all the way down to the Hilton. Nobody, I mean, even your family was gonna give me a lease, but not a 10-year lease. Nobody was gonna give me a 10-year lease. I talked to everybody from the streamline, everybody says, Gilbert, we'll let you park for nothing, but we cannot give you 10
Yeah,
years.
that's pretty tight doing 10 years, because
There's
you're locking
no
the property
way.
Yeah, that's why
owner.
we're looking
Yeah.
at shorter.
And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, believe me, and I did, everybody knows me, and I did door by door, because for me, it's not worth it to leave my building empty. And I tried with every way I could, and I worked with the city, I worked with everybody I could. It's an impasse. There's no way anybody's gonna get in there. Now, if the board decides to come up with something where they say, well, we can, like you suggested, buy some property and put it as parking, I'll guarantee you that any new business that goes in there, and you tell them this amount of money is for this parking, and you're not required a 10-year lease, they won't say a word about it.
Thank you. Reed, I think the consensus is we're willing to be flexible. Let's do something that's real, that we think is going to work. Let's get the stores occupied and take it from there.
And I would like to support Tracy's suggestion that it be more rather than less, that it's 1,500 feet in 3 years, something like that. Also, let's not overlook the possibility that the Nolan property would qualify for an ECHO grant as water access, because it's close enough to the ocean, doesn't have to be right on it, and you could pick up half your cost, up to $2.2 million right there. And don't feel funny about being greedy with these dollars, because they've been sitting out there for a year and nobody has made a run for them. So I would strongly urge, maybe you're sharing this with the manager, and see if, the Nolan property is a lot cheaper than on the ocean front, and it would provide really important parking for that core area.
And preserve taxable property on the ocean front that's going to be redeveloped.
High-end taxable property.
Yeah.
And I would just, one other comment, Reed, before you, is any garages that we do approve, that we have high standards for these garages, so we don't end up with a George Anderson lot for 20 years of asphalt and ugly fences. So whenever the parkings are built, there are some really high standards.
Well, the
for it.
design standards apply to the parking garages as well. So they would have to look like a period, if we're going to go with the Florida vernacular kind of look in there based on what standards are finally established, the parking lot can't be just a sterile cement building in the middle of this.
We went on a tour a year or so back, we
yeah,
went
I
to
know.
Winter Park on a bus tour or whatever. And there was one garage that we looked at that had plants hanging over them, no advertising, no go-karts on them or anything like that. It looked really, really nice. You could barely tell it was a parking garage.
Savannah has, and St. Pete has parking garages that look like buildings.
Yeah, I mean, this
Even
thing had
St. Augustine
vegetation
has some
growing
nice
out of it.
parking.
It was a really nice parking garage.
Yeah, and then redevelopment, that's what we want to see, is we want to see that kind of quality. So I'll take that message back about that lot, and of course, expect all your support for when that day comes. We can get there.
In Kansas City, the library parking garage looks like books. Big stack, but it's stunning. It's stunning.
All right, Reed, what's next? Redevelopment project
Joe's
update?
Crab Shack.
Yes. First of all, Joe's Crab Shack, and
Is that here for our consideration and input?
Our
Our
advice.
advice?
Well, I'm glad I could say, for the most part, I was not close to this and watched others as they worked very hard and diligently to try to put this whole thing together. But as we got near the end, we did play one role, and that was in the employee parking, in trying to identify it, secure it. And one of the points that I want to make is on that 14 South Grandview lot where we're talking about 20 parking spaces we can put in there. That was always intended to be public parking.
Right.
And I will continue to work towards trying to change that so that that is public parking as soon as possible, and we find the other 20 parking spaces adjacent to or closer to the 55 others that are required in the Joe's Crab Shack lease. So
How many years lease did you get on 44 South Coast?
it's a 5 and 5
Okay.
5 with a renewal?
with a renewal, and there's some options in there. You're talking about higher than $30 a square foot and lower than $40 a square foot. And as you may know, right now, depending where you are in that area, $20 a square foot is more the going rate,
Right.
in a lot of these areas for what you might pick up. But I can also tell you that the asking price and where people are in terms of what they're really going to sell is not what you think it is. It's going to be much higher. And and that's kind of the sticking point. You can go down on South Atlantic, and there were a couple sales, and they were very heavily discounted south of ISB on the ocean. But I've been talking to the appraisers out there, and they're continue to be challenged by finding a legitimate sale in the first place, an arm's length transaction. It just don't find those things. So how do you do some kind of comparable in terms of what things cost? It's kind of difficult. Anyway. Yes.
So, the city's providing 75 employee parking spots, but where's the public parking spots? There aren't any, that's just...
The parking is, you already have the George Anderson, the parking lot that's there.
Okay. So it's just eating up wherever else it can get it around, it's not dedicated?
At this point, we've also made it clear, it's not something that's contractual, but we've always said we're going to try to get that additional parking as we expand breakers.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because 75 spots is a lot for an employee parking allocation for a restaurant of that size. You wouldn't ordinarily have but 20, 25 for employees and maybe 100, 150 for the public. So it seems to me like somebody's fudging numbers there. If they're calling 75 employee parking spots, I think there's
Well,
an
if they're
intention
exceeding
for
to
some-
gross
some-
over $6 million.
Do what?
If their projections are to gross over $6 million, which I won't comment
We'll
on,
see how
on
that-
that, then you might need that many.
Well, Bubba Gum's gross is almost 8 million.
Do they?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that's just in their food and their little one room where you can
Then
buy
I need to stop selling hot dogs.
one in it, one in it.
They don't have 75 employee parking spots.
No, I don't know how many they have, but I will
seems like a
say
big
that
number.
that to be able to gross that much is not unheard of.
I think you're going to find that it is an employee-intensive restaurant, number one. It's going to be a flagship restaurant. And so, depending, again, how successful they are in their marketing and bringing people down there, this, we'll have to see how the shifts work. And again, it'll be something we'll look at as time goes on here. I appreciate that is probably not the norm, but it is the requirement in the contract.
Now, if it's employee, they can't charge for parking at these lots and use it for something else, can they?
Can who charge?
Joe's Crab Shack?
No,
Or let their VIPs.
Sure they can.
Who cares?
And they
Yeah.
can allow their employees to
Well, I'm
use
just
it.
curious if we're providing another revenue stream for them. I mean, I just with what Mr. G just
They're
said.
successful in cranking and bringing people, and
Yeah, I don't think.
and we've agreed to a certain number of spaces, we've agreed to a certain number of spaces, and
Yeah, there's, but
They asked for more, didn't they? They wanted actually
150,
more
I
than
think.
that. And I think they anticipate having employees living in the Main Street area there too. And this could provide parking for those employees who are key, important employees who want to walk to work and things, so.
And if they wanted to, could they also do valet parking through there if they have enough spaces?
Sure.
So I mean, they could use the spaces for whatever.
It's not forbidden.
Yeah. Who cares?
we'll see. Again, I think the main thing is to provide as close as you can, have it secure, and most importantly, what we were trying to do is make sure that this was we were being good neighbors in how this looks, the landscaping, using decorative fencing, and so beyond security, that's important. One other piece that we may or may not achieve is that we wanted these to be green parking lots. So we've been looking at all the different technology and the bioswales, and so we're going to try to employ as much of that without
I
going
think
broke.
that's wonderful.
Terrific.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the landscaping would be as much as we could provide something that we didn't have to irrigate, but we'll probably do some of that.
Reed, have you looked into any of the Nick George property, especially the vacant lot where the hotel was?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And we looked at all our options when we originally went out, and the problem there is that that's tied up right now legally. We can't get into some of these properties. So that's where things are at this point.
Reed, isn't Jerry Nolan's property also tied up legally?
Who?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
I think it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, he was foreclosed on.
Yeah.
But money heals all.
Yes. True.
Well, trying to save a few dollars here as we go forward. Let me just, I don't know if you want to see any of the information here, but this is the 44 South Coates, that building that's on the right there there's two houses, was torn down as a part of this. It was a 2-unit that Mr. Larry Mullins, who's leasing to us, had and opened that up. We also had a dying bay tree in there, and that was removed. So we have it pretty much clear except for that concrete wall. And we thought rather than take that wall down, we'll probably put a sort of a half fence, same material fencing and all of that in there. So they're evaluating that right now to see which way to go. The access to this lot would be off of Harvey. You know, you've got the one-way alleys going on either side, so hopefully that will look better. So there it is. That's a location of it. This shows you one of the issues that we have and why it's a public use permit is you just can't go out there. Mr. Mullins couldn't go out and just build a parking lot. Mm-hmm. It's not a permitted use. So we've been able to do that. By the way, this lot in the E zone is proposed to be a hotel in the future.
Right, that's
okay.
correct.
And a parking garage.
Yeah.
So that's just very difficult to see, but we did have all the engineering plans done, and it went through a administrative site plan approval or review process before we brought it to the commission, and they acted as the site plan review as opposed to you, which this is, normally you would look at this and say, you know, it meets the landscaping and does everything else, and we agree or don't agree with staff.
I question that, and when I talked to the gentleman that was listed on, because we were within so many feet, we got a direct notice, and they said that under the city code, it did not have to go before our board here. It could go directly to the city commission, because there was a lot of talk about that.
And the same goes with 14 Grandview. Has Grandview on one side. That would be the primary access, but rather than secure it on all other sides, this is going to be a drive-through. I'm thinking that when it comes to accessing this, We'll probably have those that don't have as much issue with security. Again, it may be because there aren't as many people in the non-peak times that are working in overlap situations where they won't need some of that parking. And hopefully soon, we will address that. Let me just go back for a second, because I did miss one point I wanted to make on this, is that to the north of this lot that's bounded in red is another vacant lot. I think it shows well in that picture right there. What you see in the foreground and to your left is, in front of the fence, is another piece of property.
Who owns that?
Sawaker, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Sawaker. And anyway, that is a potential addition, and we've already done the numbers on it, and it would give us the numbers we need. And it would just mean moving that over a little bit, but we've already planned for the expansion if that was possible. And then after that, you're getting into the property that Nick George has in his trust, and that's the one that we can't touch right now. So, and Mr. Meyer, I believe you have some property over there as well in parking, and I think,
Actually, just to correct,
Nick
it's not
died,
Nick-
yeah.
Mr. Nick George of the trust.
right.
It's under somebody else, but I had it for a long time. That's what we're talking about.
Right, so there's, there's different players involved, but there was a sense of urgency to do something. We executed what we thought was the best location we could get. So, anyway, move right on. Hopefully we can get that 14 South Grandview. And you can see there's wide bioswales are used here, so there's a lot of separation because we couldn't get that extra row of parking, and there was no other way to configure this.
It's all going to be paved parking lots?
Well, we've looked at everything from the very interesting green pavers that have special kind of drainage, and what we're trying to do is not get into where we have to provide underground drainage, if we can potentially get there.
Have you looked at the permeable concrete?
Yes. And all of these options are fairly expensive so far that we've run into. Interestingly enough, Mr. Mullins has placed concrete block down on his lot, and that was pretty simple. You just go over there, you place it down. We don't have that liberty to do those kinds of things. So we're going to have to make sure we get the permits and we get them soon. So we're on a very tight timetable. The holiday at the beach decorations, we already, I think, talked about that. This is the ice rink inside. If you haven't been there, it's not as big as I thought it would be, but you can still play hockey in there.
Yeah.
So, and I think they did a nice job on the band show.
I think that's lovely.
That was where most of that money went for the holiday lighting. The rest of it, I would have liked to have seen it better than it was. You look at what was proposed.
What are they going to do with that lighting? Is someone responsible to take, when it comes down in January, to be properly cleaned and prepped before it's stored?
Yes, it's all in the contract. So and it has to be delivered to us basically like new after 5 years.
Okay.
So there is a lot of that is on the contractor to maintain and keep it that way. In fact, they're up on Beach Street quite a bit, putting the wreaths back up because they keep getting blown down.
Mr. Chairman, could I read one question?
Please.
I've been waiting, I was going to ask Tracy this question, but I'll ask Reed this question. Maybe both of you. Share with me why skating is cultural and not recreational unless that's where you had to get the money to fund it. And you didn't have to pay back a percentage of the take by calling it cultural. Now, how can ice skating not be recreational logically and be cultural unless your reasoning is that's where the money was?
No, maybe I look at it too simply, and I can't answer this with any certainty, but I do know that Cultural Services manages the band shell. And that's that's primarily their involvement in this.
Well, I think the band
Not-
shell probably is cultural. I don't have a problem with that. But ice skating, I love sometimes the way things work, how we back into sometimes the right answer. Just a comment, but thank you.
Again, on A1A, we're going to look at trying to do something within the current contract to maybe upgrade a little bit, and also address, I think, the comment that was made about we're not including the whole area, and we focus on this because that was the original proposal, and we're trying to keep the costs down, and that's going to be an issue every year with the budget until something changes in Main Street. So I don't know what we will really end up with, but we're going to look at what more we can do if we're going to by next year. We're going to try to solve that. Also, we can't light those A1A light poles. There's no outlet. I hope when we keep putting new street lights in, we will think about putting the accessories in, because those accessories after the fact are very expensive, as opposed to just get them in at the beginning.
Looks a lot better.
Yeah. And so we're getting there. And the county played a major financial role in this as well. So there were some partnerships. The Ocean Walk shops, they all pitched in. This is if you're coming across the bridge on ISB, and to your right, that's the East ISB redevelopment site. You can see we've got the banners in the windows and on the poles now, and welcoming you to the beach. We have the golf pro shop is got a little display in there, and all of that's going to.
Massage parlor.
Yes.
No. This is the Welcome Center.
The former.
The former.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You might need a massage after you play golf sometimes, but this display will come out. The banners will come out of the windows because we did just get the bid in, and that is just under $30,000 to clear all of the buildings there and open the site up for redevelopment.
Including the old ABC and such?
Yes.
Well, that isn't bad.
No, I mean, we budgeted 90,000 and we were surprised.
That's terrific.
So we'll see how that goes, and we've done all the asbestos and environmental work.
Reed, who buys all the banners?
Who buys the banners?
Yeah, and we put these
Yeah.
banners up,
Yeah.
and within 24 hours the wind blows and tears down up to half of them, it seems.
These particular banners you're
Yeah.
seeing now?
Those
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can be designed with cuts in them that when the wind blows, a lot of that's dissipated through, and the banner stays up.
There's grommet systems too. There's some details missing if they're blowing off.
Well, they're blowing
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay,
and
well,
the wind
I'm-
always blows as soon as you put them up.
Okay. Well, I'm not aware of the blowing off, but I'll check into that because again, it may be just a hardware issue that needs to be solved.
I've watched it for years.
Yeah.
Okay. And at first they were putting up, and the whole things were blowing off, the whole hardware and the signs and everything. And then they've reinforced them and put all these nasty, ugly straps all over it and such.
You don't want that.
And so but then they put them up and they're still blowing off. The primary reason they're blowing off is because they're not designed to have the flaps
The
with
wind
them.
load, just.
Yeah, it just, especially on the bridge and up high, and if they can be designed and they put these little U-shaped
Yeah,
cuts
I know
in
what
them,
you're saying,
and that will reduce the wind load. I'm willing to bet by half.
trees with leaves.
And they may hold up a whole lot better because they get up and
I'll look
they're
into
gone.
that because we're looking at some alternate banners that we'll be putting in as well in the future to identify each of the redevelopment areas.
And I'm sure they could also get the things designed so that the whole hardware system can bend this way or this way.
Right.
On some kind of good spring system, so that when the wind pushes it, it's gonna not just.
Right,
take
they
the-
do make those.
The full brunt force.
I think Orman has one that Granada
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Are they the ones that, and they
Yes.
seem to hold
They
up? So
stay up,
maybe we need
yeah.
to look at how Orman's doing them.
Orman has the little cuts that you see.
Ah, so
Uh-huh.
they have those.
Yeah,
One says,
Birthplace of speed.
right.
Yeah, they have the little cuts, and they've been there for years.
Eh,
Mm-hmm.
There we go, Reed.
Okay, I'll pass it on to Cultural Services, see what we can come up with. Thank you for the comment. This one is new. This is down on Main Street. We have finally answered our former board member's request that if we took down the flower baskets, which were plastic flowers, we would come back with some natural planting and some flower containers. And we've just done that, similar to downtown, but using the same imprints. It's interesting because these are the charcoal color, which matches the charcoal kind of colors you see with the red pavers that kind of interchanged. And it really, I think, came out good, especially with the poinsettias. We started out with that because we already had some poinsettias that were in our shop, and we were distributing those, so the timing was good. And we have more coming, so you haven't seen the final phase because we haven't got quite down to Peninsula where the Helen Humphreys has her shop, and we want to make sure we get there.
She's on Hollywood.
But this is the same issue about holiday lights, is are we going to do everything from the ocean over? And there's going to be some challenges in each of these areas as we place these because there's only so much room in each of these areas. So we're looking at corners where we can do this, and then we have the bike week issue. So little details to work out, but I think it's kind of added a little bit to the area.
I'd like to make a comment. As we go for breakfast every morning, you go up ISB to A1A, the sign there, the world's most famous beach, it is so attractive. I'd like to make a positive note in this meeting of how attractive that sign is. It's always lit up red, and it's very, very good. Anyone going in, they see it, it's very good.
Good. Guess we're the board comments.
Okay, very good. All right, any brief board comments?
I'll have a brief one.
Dino?
Well, item 7, you talked about the backlit street name signs. I just want to note that I did drive A1A, and the difference from the city of Daytona to Ormond Beach is that there's only a selected number of street name signs that are backlit, and every one of them that I saw at nighttime when I drove it, were lit. In Ormond Beach, there's a significant number of street signs that are backlit. So it makes the impact that Daytona Beach, a bunch of their signs are out, which is the point you made, but the signs that were out were not backlit. But anyways, I just want to, and I don't know if that's the...
Well, we were told that all of the signs in the redevelopment area on A1A had internal lighting.
They don't.
That started the whole debate, because some of them were flickering, and it looks to me like somebody moved the bulbs around because signs that weren't lit are now lit, especially at Main Street in A1A.
Yeah, those...
Right, we fixed them.
Yeah.
There's one, I think there's only one now that's out, according to, just talking to the traffic engineer today, and that one has some more parts we got to order, but,
Right, I saw that one, yeah.
yeah, so now we know, number one, it's not DOT, but it is our traffic engineers now that have to maintain those. There's some agreement there. As I drive around the rest of the city, I can see there's a lot of others that are out on some of these mast arms. But where those new mast arms are, typically you see the backlit. There's a whole bunch of them, as I think, Dino, you were saying, that are going to be, they're just regular sign, there's no lighting,
Well,
there's no backlighting.
we're not talking about the regular
Right,
signs.
yeah.
We're talking about the sandwich.
Right, so once you leave north of Oak Ridge, there's no additional lighting, and you can go all the way down to, as I did, Granada.
Right.
And right there at the intersection, you have the backlits again.
Right. My point wasn't the ones that didn't have electrical
Right.
fixtures. That, even I can't get those to be lit. It's the ones that did have the electrical fixtures that had the lights.
Gary, that could be fixed with money.
That had the lights burned
That's
out.
all it takes.
And I actually saw one of your engineers when he was trying to figure out whether the whole thing was gone, could be replaced, and the whole thing had been eaten completely by the salt and wind.
Yeah.
They take an awful lot of damage there.
Tim, any quick comments?
First, thank you. The sidewalks look great in the redevelopment. All the sidewalks on A1A from one end to the other in their redevelopment area got cleaned and they look very good. And just everybody have a happy and safe Christmas, New Year.
Tracy?
Wanted to say I appreciate what's going to become our new redevelopment project updates. It's a quick, easy way to go to things. Also wanted to say everyone have a Merry Christmas, and also wanted to say, Dan, this is 2 months in a row. I think we're going to get out of here under your time frame.
We're working on it. David?
The only comments I wanted to make is tonight there was some comments made about unifying. John made a comment about unifying Main Street, and some of his comments, the noise ordinance that Dan brought up, Timmy, and the parking, and making the whole E-zone and everything, unifying from ISB to Oak Ridge. I think sometime next year, in the very near future, in the first couple meetings we had next year, I think it's about time we quit dancing around the idea or the subject of itinerant vending, and let's bring that to the forefront as a board, and let's get it out there on the table as far as taking some kind of recommendation to the CRA as far as leaving it as it is or opening up itinerant vending to the entire Main Street redevelopment area from ISB to Oak Ridge, or even that, taking it to the entire city. So we even the playing field for all businesses in this area before we get too much further down on this E-zone and everything else down the road. It's something we've talked about here and there. We've danced around it for years, and I think it's time we brought it to the forefront as a board, and we want to recommend things to the CRA board and the commission. Well, let's start with a real controversial first of the year. So, Merry Christmas, everybody.
I would like to make another comment. As we go up A1A in the morning, every morning we were getting my car all splattered up with the sprinklers being out on the A1A, out on this pavement. So I finally got PO'd one morning, and I took my phone and I called, and I got a call back from Brad, and guess what? It was just a timer problem.
No, they were on this morning again.
Were they?
6 o'clock, all over the,
Well, they're supposed to be going off at 5 a.m., he said.
no, they were on at 6.
I wasn't up that or up there that early.
There again, Gary, with money, it can be fixed.
Well, or a simple
Mr. Chairman, one.
Just call Brad, is it Brad Eisner, I would assume?
Yeah, Brad Eisner,
Well,
yeah.
call him and tell him when you see something, and he said he would take care of it, so call him.
We have some terms that are up at this meeting, is that correct? 4 seats that have to be reappointed, is that correct?
Yes, there are, but there's no agenda item for that at this time. In other words, for the 21st of December, there's nothing on the agenda yet. So that one hasn't come up yet. I know the Midtown Board, I believe, is the first one that's up, and they're taking that one forward on the 21st of December.
And we're okay with, I think the policy in the city, unlike the county, is we continue to serve
Yes.
until reappointed. Is that also with individuals who are term limited out?
Yes.
Okay.
Then see you all next year.
Yeah.
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 And
It was a
another-
hard-fought seat for some of us.
Well, first I want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever works.
The Baha'i, too, don't forget.
Yes.
the
David, I
Baha'i.
like the idea of dealing with the itinerant vendors. Reed, can we look forward to maybe putting that on as an agenda item so we can discuss that at length in January or February at the latest?
I'll discuss it with the people who deal with controversy. Yes.
We could discuss it whether it's on the
Reed,
agenda
you
or
can
not.
call me anytime, Reed. Call me anytime.
Reed, I haven't been getting the agendas in advance like we had talked about before, too. It stopped in the last month or two, so maybe we could
I got mine on.
And by the way,
He's supposed to send it to me before he sends it out, so I can look at it.
I didn't get mine till Monday, though.
by the way, Reed, the day that you have the itinerant vending, can you also bring breakfast?
Yeah. I'll tell you what,
It may not be a 2-hour.
Reed, the itinerant vending question is included in the E-zone master plan as a question. I mean,
Yes, it is.
it's there, it's buried in there. I guess the question to your keepers are, when would it be appropriate for us to make the recommendation? Because it's there, and I've heard members of the commission at public meetings talk about this is going to be a big hot issue for them, and I'm sure they're going to look to our advice as an advisory board on that issue. So maybe the timing is perfect, Dave. Your timing might be right on
We
the...
should deal with it before they think about looking to us, because they may not look to us before they go to make a decision.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely.
So I think it's something that we need to look at in the
So could you share that with the manager that?
I'll
you know-
share that, and, first of all, I think that the E-zone itself, they're tentatively, we're talking about a January the 25th meeting for a workshop.
Right.
And on February the 15th, there was a request when they were at the second hearing for the redevelopment plan and the comprehensive plan to move that to February the 15th. That happened, got continued. And so this workshop will happen first, and then on February 15th, that is the required time to bring the issue back to the commission.
And any other issues, because in reading our minutes, I realized we left the door open on several of our considerations that we could revisit items that were in either the redevelopment plan or the E-zone plan. So we have, one more meeting to, if we want to add or delete or...
Now, this workshop, this is a city commission redevelopment CRA workshop?
On the
My
E-zone.
understanding is the city commission, because it's at the city commission level where it stopped at the very end here of that process, and that they will be back here as the commission, and
But that's the E-zone,
the intent is to put some of those graphics back up and make sure that the public, not just the commission, has a chance to look at this again. Remember back in July, I think we started this whole process and had that meeting. There's a desire to get back out there and have one more opportunity before they make a decision here.
Decision on what?
On the redevelopment plan that you all recommended, and on the comprehensive plan.
Right. Okay.
On those text amendments and the changes to the redevelopment plan.
And your elimination of the turnaround at A1A.
And one other just thing, whenever there is a discussion on itinerant vendors, it would be, and I'm sure you would supply it, but it would be really helpful to have the actual code in front of us. Also concerning TPAs, how that gets involved. As Dave was talking about leveling the playing field, it's either all or nothing kind of thing is what I was hearing, but it would be helpful to know who has what restrictions and who doesn't have any.
And there are some.
Oh, yeah,
Whole 9 yards.
yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you all.
Made it? Did we make it?
Yeah,